Chapter 1. The Vanishing Woman and the Fluorescent Truth of Montprix. Sometimes, Paris is particularly sarcastic. Today, for example, it felt like a bakery judging me from behind the glass. Seriously? Back again, with no plan and empty hands? I'm 37. A former daughter-in-law, almost an ex-wife, and most definitely a former optimist. And right now, I was heading to Montprix like I wasn't shopping for turkey breast, but taking a guided tour through my own life's mistakes. The supermarket lights were like an interrogation room, bright and merciless. They spared no one. Not the bags under my eyes, not the laugh lines that had the audacity to sign a long-term lease as wrinkles. But worse, they lit up something mirrors usually miss, the inside emptiness. Neon has a way of highlighting loneliness like it's on special. I moved through the aisles feeling like a ghost. Someone bumped my cart and didn't say a word. Someone else was shouting into their phone. And me, I was just looking for turkey. It used to mean celebration. A small one, but ours. Now? It was a way to convince myself I could still care, even if only about the side dish. I grabbed the turkey. Then potatoes. One with a crack in it, like my heart. Frozen green beans. Still green. Still, somehow, the color of hope time, just for the scent. And cranberry jam. Who even needs cranberry jam, you ask? Me. It's red. Like the dress I haven't worn in years. The basket clinked like an old music box. Every sound felt too personal. Outside, the shopping bags hit my hip, like reminders, you're still here. Paris was loud, but I only heard the cobblestones under my feet. And my own thoughts. Adrian. Even his name didn't echo in my chest anymore. Maybe just a spasm. He used to call me, my anchor. Then left, for a blonde who sold organic candles and said things like, the world is just a mirror of your thoughts. I've stopped looking into mirrors altogether. I was heading back to the one person I still had a real thread with. Adrian's father, the only man in that family who actually keeps his word. He's 72, wears thin-framed glasses, and knows how to be quiet in a way that makes you listen. I opened the door. The air inside was different. Thick, not with tension, but with preparation. On the table, papers. Perfectly aligned. Like they were laid out by an engineer, not an old man simply tired of mess. Etienne was sitting nearby. Hands folded. Eyes on the window. He didn't turn to me, but said,
"We're going to have a long evening."
And I realized, the trip to the supermarket had been the easy part. The real story was about to begin. Chapter 2. The room that waited for me. Have you ever felt like furniture was judging you? No, seriously. I walked into the dining room and caught a look from a chair. Yes, that chair, the one with polished legs and cream-colored upholstery, where Hélène, Adrian's older sister, usually Saturday. She always settled into it as if presiding over the Ministry of Inheritance. Now the chair was empty, but I could swear it whispered, "You don't belong here anymore." And I whispered back in my head, "Oh, shut up. You're just furniture." Etienne was silent. His silence wasn't cold, it was like the pause in a symphony, when the orchestra freezes and even the air waits for the next note. On the table lay neat stacks of papers. Snow-white sheets, aligned like a display in a very smug notary's office. They weren't just placed there, they were arranged with intent. I sat across from him, dropped my grocery bag on the floor, didn't bother taking off my shoes, and asked, "Is this for the new season of Family Secrets?" He nodded without smiling, but the corner of his mouth twitched. In his world, that counted as a full-scale emotional outburst.
"These are reports,"
he said finally.
"Medical, financial, legal."
"The whole collection? Looks like you're hosting the Rothschild archives."
"Almost. Just fewer diamonds and more contempt."
I leaned forward to get a better look. The top folder held medical files, that classic clinical font. Dry, formal, merciless. Doctors write about you the way they write about broken printers. Subject complains of pain in the upper quadrant. Subject. My ex-husband's mistress is apparently a goddess of aromatherapy, and his father is a subject. Brilliant. Are you seriously ill? I asked quietly.
"Terminally."
He replied as casually as if saying, "We're out of coffee right now?"
"Right now I'm drinking water. I'll die a little later. if you don't mind.
My God, I adore his irony. Even death, with him, has dry humor and a calendar. I flipped through the papers, bills for tests, scans, x-rays where his insides looked like floor plans of the Louvre. Only, instead of rooms with Monet, there were tumors, metastases, and stamps. Very civilized. And under them, the invoices. Oh, those glorious multi-page proofs of the family's love, expressed in euros. Financing their precious Versailles, the ancestral home where Etienne had been given a room overlooking the trash bins and access to the guest bathroom. Family love, you know. The longer it sits, the more it tastes like vinegar. This is all from them? I asked.
All.
Etienne nodded.
First they asked to borrow. Then they demanded. Then they conveniently forgot I existed.
And now you want, what exactly?
To put everything back where it belongs. Quietly. No shouting. No theatrics. In a way that makes it impossible for them to move the furniture again and pretend I was never here.
I looked at him. He was thin, the blue veins on his hands standing out like train routes on a map. His eyes were pale gray, like Parisian skies before rain. He sat straight, almost ceremonially, as if preparing to deliver a speech in the Senate. Instead of a tie, he wore a blanket around his shoulders.
I want you to help me,
he said.
Not because you owe me anything. Because you're the only one who never tried to buy me.
You sure? I literally baked you an apple pie last week.
And I'm still alive. Which is, frankly, a miracle.
I laughed, the kind of laugh that frees you. Like a crack spreading through the glass dome I had built around myself. All right. What's the plan? I asked, slapping my knees. Court? Scandal? An interview in Le Figaro?
For now, order. Monroe is coming tomorrow. My lawyer. You'll like her. She doesn't tolerate lies.
I nodded. Monroe was serious business. I'd heard of her, a woman with the eyes of a prosecutor and the voice of a nanny who probably keeps an axe in her closet. We fell silent. A bus passed outside. In the kitchen, something ticked quietly, either the clock or the old refrigerator that had survived more heartbreaks than I had. You know, I said, looking at the papers, sometimes I feel like this entire family was born inside a glossy magazine. The kind where everyone smiles while holding a knife behind their back.
They were born in Versailles,
he said.
They just forgot that even palaces eventually crumble.
And I understood again, I wasn't here by accident. In this house, I was a witness. An ally. Sometimes, almost a daughter. Not by blood, but by choice. Which meant it was time to prepare. Because tomorrow could very well change everything. Chapter 3: Cinderella with a suitcase and a lawyer with an axe. The morning started with me almost breaking a nail trying to open a jar of jam. Which frankly felt symbolic. Yesterday I signed up for a family revolution, and today I was already wrestling with a lid as if it were guarding cherry secrets classified as top secret. My manicure suffered, but the jam was rescued. Justice prevailed. One item from the to-do list. Done. In the kitchen as always, Etienne reigned supreme. Even just sitting there in silence with a cup of tea, he gave off the vibe of someone quietly preparing a new French Republic. He didn't ask how I slept, and rightly so. My night involved anxious thoughts, a stomach that remembered cheese and baguette at 2 a.m., and a neighbor's cat delivering his entire operatic repertoire beneath my window.
Monroe will be here at 11.
On the dot?
She's like that. Not a fan of improvisation.
Well, we've just launched a family jazz session.
Let's see who hits the wrong notes.
He didn't smile, but I knew. That was his version of affection. Dry, measured like a good cognac. Though in the morning he drank only lemon tea. Me. Coffee. Strong. The kind of strength you need to leave Versailles. If Versailles had a bus schedule. I went to get dressed. Not that I planned to impress Monroe with my fashion sense, but meeting the person who might secure your legal immortality in a bathrobe with daisies felt like a losing strategy. I chose a gray blouse. It made me look like an adult. Dark trousers and just enough mascara to say, I'm not hopeless, but not enough to suggest I'm trying to flirt. No seductive moves, just composure and a hint of Parisian bitterness in my eyes. At exactly 11 the doorbell rang. Not chimed, rang. Sharp and direct like a gunshot to the brain. I went to open it. There he was, Monroe. Tailored charcoal suit, a briefcase that probably fluctuated with the euro, and eyes that you just don't lie to, not even about eating the last yogurt.
Madam,
She said. I'm Sophie, I replied. You can call me by my name.
I prefer using legally recognized designations.
Ah, the miracle of diplomacy. We moved to the study. The papers were already laid out. Etienne sat with the posture of someone engraved on old banknotes. Monroe nodded like a general before a war council.
Documents are ready.
She said.
I reviewed them last night.
You don't have a personal life? I blurted.
I have work, and in that work, room for victories. Your husband's family, as I understand, prefers other tactics.
I wanted to say something clever. Nothing came, so I nodded. I probably looked like Cinderella at a NATO summit.
Our strategy is to initiate the transfer.
She continued.
But let's be clear. With this kind of family, don't expect silence.
You think they'll react?
I expect a 3-act opera with full special effects. I can handle it. Just no illusions, please.
And all before lunch? I mumbled.
I work fast.
I picked up the pen. The signature felt longer than my name. As if with every stroke I was stepping out of one life and into another. One where I wasn't the ex, or the daughter-in-law, or the extra. But a key figure. Legally, yes. But still a figure.
They'll respond.
Monroe said.
Scandal. Complaints. Insults.
They always do.
Etienne added.
Even when they don't get the napkin color they wanted.
I heard Helene once called the police because her hotel cheese didn't come with walnuts. I offered.
Then we'll be fine.
Monroe concluded. And you know what? I believed her. After the signatures, the stamps, the verifications, the scans, and the ceremonial folder closing, Monroe stood up.
Tomorrow, they'll get the notifications. The day after, they'll realize you can't be ignored anymore.
And you?
Said Etienne.
We've begun.
I feel like I just filed a lawsuit against the entire Versailles. I replied.
You did.
We drank tea. Not champagne, too soon for that. But I already knew, for the first time in a long while, I wasn't just a piece in someone else's game. I was a player too. Chapter 4. Royal Blood, Discarded Bride. If my life had Netflix-style episode titles, this one would be called The Discarded Bride, Season 3, Episode 1, Revenge Served Cold, with thyme and cranberry jam. On Monday morning, the silence in the hallway was so well-behaved and composed, it deserved a medal for self-control. But it didn't last long. At 11:14 a.m. sharp, the door flew open so violently, you'd think someone was about to be arrested. In stormed Adrian, Helene, Melissa, and Honoris, the full noisy delegation, loaded with duty-free bags like they hadn't just landed from an airport, but returned from the Vanity Fair of their own egos. The logos on the bags were louder than their voices. The scent? A strange cocktail of vanilla, alcohol, and that chocolate you know is made in a factory, but still labeled handcrafted. None of them slowed down. They were laughing, recounting their awful flight where the champagne was warm and the flight attendant completely insufferable. I listened like someone who had accidentally wandered into a tour of a life I was never invited to join. Suitcases clattered across the floor. The house trembled. I didn't.
Darling, we are home.
Helene sang. She entered as always, like the rightful heir to every wall in the place.
And where's Etienne?
She asked, offhandedly, like asking where the salt is. I slowly set my teacup down. Carefully, almost gently. I paused. Then paused again, long enough for the silence to spread out and unfold itself. Etienne is gone, I said. He passed away Sunday night. The funeral was yesterday. Half the neighborhood came to say goodbye. The words hung in the air like someone had suddenly hit mute. Adrian dropped his bag. Out tumbled wine bottles, chocolate, and a single Eiffel Tower magnet. The bottles clinked softly, like a badly placed period at the end of a sentence. And then, time stopped. The chandelier's shadow flickered, as if the house had taken a breath and was holding it. The wall clock kept ticking, but each tick sounded like it had been mi-seat. The crinkle of the bag that fell by Melissa's feet lasted one beat too long. The air thickened, like just before a storm. And in that pause, it became clear, they were on one side now. And I, on the other. Melissa's glossy, I'm always photogenic smile vanished. Her lashes trembled, like they suddenly remembered real emotions existed. Honoris opened her mouth, but speech didn't show up. Helen. Helen kept smiling for a few extra seconds. That smile clung to her face like a plastic sticker someone forgot to peel off. Then came the crack. Then the fall. I pulled a thick folder from the cupboard, the one Etienne had prepared in advance. I read aloud. Not dramatically, calmly. Almost like a grocery list. Repeated refusals. Deliberate neglect of medical needs. Financial bleeding disguised as gifts. Written testimony from neighbors confirming abandonment. Then I pressed play on the video. And the silence became so dense, you could fold it into a hat and wear it. On the screen, Etienne. Restrained. Direct. Weakened, but dignified. He spoke of the days they didn't come. Of visits cancelled by SMS. Of gifts from the whole family sent via delivery, receipts still inside. He spoke of disappointment, of silence, of the pain of waiting for people who treated care like a lifestyle optional extra. When the screen went dark, the silence exhaled. Melissa looked up, her voice barely audible.
I know I should have come more.
She whispered.
I thought there'd be time. Then work, the baby, life. And now he's gone. And I never said thank you.
I nodded. Her words echoed with something I didn't expect from her. For the first time, I saw not just the big sister, but a human being. One who had shared this house, but not this life. Honoris shifted from foot to foot, as if words made standing harder. Her voice, too, was softer than usual.
He always asked for a postcard from the beach. I thought he was joking. We all had messaging apps, photos, stories. I never replied. Then I found them, all the old postcards in his drawer. Even the ones from when I was a kid. With seashells and cartoon penguins in sunglasses. I didn't know that meant something real to him.
The air lightened. For a moment, the house wasn't just a battleground. It was a place of recognition. And then, the doorbell. Monroe. She entered like a prosecutor stepping into court. Briefcase. Eyes. Footsteps. All said, you can scream all you want. The verdict's already in. The ozone scent of fresh justice filled the room.
Ladies and gentlemen,
She said.
according to a signed and notarized decision, estate management is now transferred to Sophie. The will is not open to contest. If you wish to appeal, you're free to do so in court. But not today, and not in this house.
We'll challenge it.
Helen shouted. Monroe didn't blink.
You're welcome to try. Just be sure to budget accordingly. Your finances are limited.
Silence. Real silence. The unedited kind. I walked over to Adrian. In my hand, a small box. The one that once held too many hopes and just one ring. My wedding ring. Plain, no gems. Not worth much. But worn like it cost me a lifetime. I remembered. A year ago I stood in this very hallway, holding a suitcase, listening to my own heart misfire like a departing train. He said, "Work's calling, you know how it is." I said, "So is mine." But neither of us left. And the ring didn't mean us. It meant, I was hoping. Now it meant, I'm done. "This is mine," I said. "I'm giving it back to you." I placed it in his palm. No tremble. No tears. No drama. Just a period. You left your father to die alone. And me, even earlier. You no longer have a home. Or an inheritance. And I'm no longer yours. The ring clinked in his hand. Short, polite. Like a waiter quietly placing the check on the table. Chapter 5. Mistress of the house, no inheritance, only the keys. After they left, the apartment breathed silence. Even the fridge, usually buzzing like a mother-in-law with unresolved complaints, had gone quiet, or at least irrelevant. I made myself some mint and linden tea, not for the ritual, just to calm my heartbeat. As for my conscience, if it was still around, it was curled up somewhere nearby like a cat sleeping under the radiator. Duty-free boxes still littered the floor. One had a bottle of wine peeking out. Another, bars of chocolate with words printed like they came straight from a French for beginners textbook. Amour, joie, famille. I gave one box a nudge, not hard, but with just the right dose of contempt. A chocolate bar slipped out and rolled under the dresser. I figured it could stay there. Like a relic of their family love. I took a slow sip of tea. Mint and linden, for the tachycardia and the leftover guilt. Though honestly, I think guilt was temporarily revoked along with my last name. My mind was still humming. Etienne's face, the video, the signatures, Monroe's scent, Adrian's face, the ring in his hand. I'd finally said everything that needed saying. And the most shocking part? Someone heard me. That was new. I sat at the kitchen table. The same table where we used to have three-course dinners, not out of time or love, but because Hélène didn't acknowledge meals with fewer than 3 components. Once, I dared to bring plates without placemats. She looked at me like I'd invited her to eat with her hands in a bucket. Since then, I never forgot the placemats. Even when I left crying, I took them with me. Now, the table held nothing but my mug. But for the first time, it also held no Hélène. And in that emptiness, I could finally breathe. I opened my notebook and wrote, "How to live when you become the lady of the house in someone else's way." 1. Air out the place, including yourself too. Find the heating manual. 3. Hide the silk napkins. 4. Eat something with your hands. No tablecloth. 5. Bring back the playlist, the one where people are still alive. 6. Hang something in the hallway that makes you smile. I leaned back in the chair. The notebook sat in front of me like a personal constitution. No grand manifestos, just daily things. But that's what life is built from, isn't it? Piece by piece. And this life, it's finally mine. Later, I went into Etienne's room. Quietly, like entering a chapel. His blanket was folded neatly. Books on the side table stood upright like little soldiers. In the vase, one flower still remained, wilted, but not fallen. Its scent held something stubborn in it. Just like Etienne himself. I sat on the edge of the bed, rested my hand on the blanket, and whispered, "I'll do it. Just like you wanted." And honestly, I swear he heard me. A few hours later, I went downstairs to the post office. Had to send a few letters, part of the estate, some notices to charities, and a postcard, the very first one, to the box we were setting up for the future foundation Monroe and I had decided to build. The line was long. Ahead of me, a man was describing the tragedy of a missing package with the passion of a Shakespearean death scene. I half listened, half drifted, until I heard behind me.
Madame Michaud?
I turned around. A woman in her 50s stood there, wearing a rain-grey coat and eyes full of something closer to understanding than logic.
You're Sophie.
"Yes," I replied, squinting. "And you are?"
My name is Julie. I was your father-in-law's caretaker. Unofficially. Night shifts.
"Why in secret?"
Because it's easier that way. The family doesn't ask. And you wouldn't have accepted it right away.
"Me?
I saw you. You were wearing armor. Maybe still are.
You not afraid to say that to me?"
If I were afraid, I wouldn't have spent nights with a man who could have died at any moment.
And that's when I realized, this story isn't over yet. Chapter 6. The Caregiver of Secrets and the Closet of Ghosts. Julie, a woman you want to lean on, even without heels or a glass of wine. Strong hands. Serious eyes. Her face isn't exactly stern, but the expression says, "I'm here for you, just don't try my patience." I liked her immediately. Maybe because I looked like an idiot, but without malice. We sat down across from a bakery. Croissants. Tea. An almond pastry. It disappeared instantly, born by hunger and history. Julie claimed it like her trophy, and said,
A long time I haven't eaten something sweet without a reason. Usually, at funerals or after my shift.
I nodded. Etienne used to say he didn't have a caregiver.
Because he didn't want them to know. Especially the family.
He hid you?
He protected you.
That's when I paused. Me?
He used to say, "You're the only one in the house who doesn't pretend everything is fine when everything falls apart. And you mustn't know about the injections, about the pain, about all of it. Because you already carry too much."
I felt the tea in my hands get a little hotter. Or maybe my eyes started to burn. Julie told how she came at night. Through the back door. Etienne left her a key under the laurel leaf pot. They changed dressings. He took medicines. She listened as he spoke of his past, of his childhood, of a wife who died of liver cancer, of a son who loved vintage cars more than living people. And of me. As someone who stayed, just stayed, when others left.
He used to say he wouldn't live until the trial.
She whispered.
But if you finish this, he'll go in peace. Do you want to hear everything?
Of course.
Then listen. He cried sometimes. Not out loud. His lips moved. No sound. And you didn't know.
I was nearby.
You were the best of them. But you didn't know everything. This isn't a reproach. It's life.
I nodded. The pastry between us was half eaten. I felt like someone just handed me a USB drive containing the movie that explained everything. Was he hiding other secrets? I asked. And hearing my voice, I thought I sounded like a junior detective in retirement.
Not secrets.
Julie smirked.
One time, he showed me a closet. In his office. Behind the books.
What's in it?
I didn't look. He said, while I'm alive, don't touch.
And now he was dead. And I, in the house where closets speak louder than people. Half an hour later, we said goodbye. Julie promised to help, if needed, and left with the look of someone who'd handed me not just information, but body armor. I walked home thinking, it's time for the closet. It was in the same place it always was. Behind the shelf of encyclopedias. I pulled out the volume 20th Century Literature, lightly brushed off the dust. Yes, I will actually wipe it now, this is my house, and pressed the panel. A small compartment opened. No gold. No fake passports. Only one album. Grey. Cloth-bound. Without a title. I opened it, and froze in place. Photos. Black and white. Color. Old. New. Etienne. With a young woman, his wife. Etienne. With a child. Adrian. Etienne. In the garden we once shared over tea. Then, letters. His handwriting. Short notes. And finally, a sheet addressed to me. On it, one sentence.
You are not a guest in this house. You are its voice. Let them hear you.
I sat with that album like it was something alive. And I realized, this was his way of handing me the baton. Not power. Not money. Meaning. From that day on I entered a new mode. By day, business. Papers. The foundation. Legal formality. By night, the garden. Tea. The album. I flipped through its pages as though trying to learn the language he once thought in. He was no longer here, but he was present in every detail, in the pattern on the wallpaper. The coffee's aroma. The barely audible creak of the old closet. I listened to this house like one listens to the memory of a person they never got to hug for the last time. And, strangely, I was not afraid of being alone in it. Because for the first time, I was home. Chapter 7. Garden Tea, Cadet Neighbor and the Return of Family Skeletons. There are a few things the French take seriously. A good baguette, honest cheese, and of course, the garden. Even if it's the size of a postage stamp. Even if all it has is one ancient rosebush that's lived through more drama than all my relationships combined. Etienne's garden was special. Not trimmed or staged for a magazine, but alive. A little wild, and that made it real. Ferns battled geraniums for dominance, while lavender watched them with the disdain of a theatre actress judging influences. This was where I now came every morning, with a mug of tea, my notebook, and a distinct sense of being watched. Not by a cat. Not by neighbors. But by the house itself. One morning, I noticed someone waving from the third floor across the courtyard. A man in his 60s, wearing a striped sailor shirt and holding a newspaper. He looked like a cross between Jean-Paul Belmondo and a retiree who knows every scandal on the block.
Bonjour, mademoiselle. New around here?
Not quite. I'm a survivor. He laughed.
Ah, so you're the famous daughter-in-law.
The most notorious, I replied. And that's how I met Monsieur Bassin. A former high school history teacher, now a retiree with a balcony mission, watching everyone and pretending it's academic research. 2 days later, he was drinking tea with me in the garden, telling stories about how rosemary used to grow here and how Etienne once had a dog named Claudius.
A little crazy, but soulful.
He said, like that was the default setting for most men in his life. Meanwhile, the house breathed. With faint creaks, pipe noises, and the scent of dust that no one could ever quite conquer. I was going through drawers. Finding things. Old scarves, notes, photos of Etienne smiling. Not the dry, wry smile I knew, but open, almost childlike. Like a kid finally allowed to eat pasta with ketchup. But under the warm dust, a new reality began to seep in. Adrian started writing. Polite, at first.
Would it be possible to collect my record collection?
I didn't reply. Then more insistent.
Legally, I have a right to some of the furniture.
I replied. Legally, I can throw it out the window. Then Helen called. And left a voice message. I played it and got a full-blown performance titled Still Your Family.
Sophie, I know you're upset, but we were all in shock, you know? You've always been one of us. We just need to understand, talk, share, remember.
I almost softened. Until she added.
By the way, have you seen my Limoges vase?
And that's why I love Helen. Even during a possible truce, she never forgets the porcelain. I didn't reply. But I started suspecting. They weren't going to back off. They didn't want Etienne. But they wanted what was left of him. Everything that could be measured in square meters, euros, or vintage French ceramics. Monroe confirmed.
They filed an objection to part of the will.
Which part?
The part where you're alive, apparently.
We were sitting in the foundation office, now set up on the house's ground floor. Tiny room, but already with a desk, laptop, a stack of papers, and coffee, in case Justice needed caffeine. I felt exhausted. Not from heavy bags or a long day, but the kind of exhaustion that comes when you're once again forced to prove that you deserve your place. In the story. In the family. In the house. In life. Maybe they are right, I said. Maybe I don't belong here. I was just accidental.
No.
Said Monroe.
You're here because you chose to stay. That always costs more than staying out of habit.
I thought of the garden. The kettle that now boiled each evening just for me. The notebook. The letters. Etienne's words.
You are not a guest in this house. You are its voice.
Then I remembered. There's a jar of jam in the kitchen. And I don't care what it's worth. It's delicious. And it's mine. Which means, I'm staying. Chapter 8. Medical Theatre, a stage where truth pretends to be a lie. I always thought a stage was for actors. But as it turns out, the real drama doesn't happen in a theatre. It plays out where a person decides not to wait for death, but puts it center stage, complete with set design, lighting, drip stand, and oxygen mask. Where you're not an actress, you're the director. And your audience is your own family, ready to applaud, but only if you die on cue and with style. Monroe and I sat in the office. On the table lay a list. Paper, underlined, looking like a high school play script. At the top, in a thick handwritten headline, Project Medical Theatre below. Set design, lighting, equipment, photo, video, audience, dramaturgy. I looked at it and thought, we've lost our minds. This is madness, I said.
It's a strategy.
Monroe replied.
A French family respects feelings only when they are official.
How about conscience?
Conscience is on vacation. We are not going to disturb it.
And that's how it began. First, we ordered equipment. Through a medtech guy I knew, the same one who lives a parallel life renting for stands and monitors like props. Paris, my love, still knows how to surprise. Then, lighting. That part was fun. A man named Serge appeared, ponytailed like a 70s professor, face like he was lighting Edith Piaf's funeral. He walked the rooms with lamps, reflectors, and declared,
Need shadows so that pain gets volume.
whatever that meant. It looked beautiful. Etienne's room was transformed. We removed all things cozy, blankets, books, photos. In their place, a monitor, numbers, the 4 stand, and an oxygen mask. Even I, looking at him, didn't immediately recognize how alive he still was. He lay with his head turned slightly, wearing the expression you'd call tragically contemplative. Almost like an actor playing a betrayed king. I moved closer and adjusted his pillow. You okay?
Never felt more alive.
He rasped.
And, how do I look?
Like a diagnosis with a soul. We started filming. First, photos. Close-up of his hand. Thin, veins like watercolor maps. Then, a wide shot. Body in bed, numbers on screen, green light, just enough shadow to emphasize hollow cheeks. The effect was so strong I nearly cried. Even though I knew it was a performance. Then, audio. Etienne spoke slowly. Pauses. Sighs. Lines carved like knives.
I have no regrets. If you are hearing this, I'm already gone. Farewell.
I recorded as though I were filming a movie. And something inside me clicked. Not like a camera, but like a moral compass whispering, "Are you sure?" And I answered, yes. Because sometimes a lie is the only way to make others see the truth. Then, a click. Not in the camera. In my head. Stop. We've filmed enough, I said, and hit record off. Monroe nodded silently, taking out her laptop. 15 minutes later, it was cut, sent. Email subject, Etienne Michaud's last word recipients. The whole family, including those who deleted his number years ago but kept his bank transfers. We didn't finish our tea before it began. First, messages. My God, how unfair. Poor Etienne. We are praying for him. Someone was packing to leave. Someone else called a psychologist. And someone forwarded the video to every contact, including their sushi delivery guy. Then, calls. One after another. Hélène, 3 times in a row. I didn't answer. Adrian, from a different number. Melissa, a voice message.
This is monstrous. We knew nothing. Why didn't you tell us? We would've. We would've.
I listened only halfway. That part, but he still loved us. And I hung up. No more. My friends. Unconditional love had been burned to ashes by disappointment. Etienne loved silence. He loved the garden. He loved simple things. But he didn't love you. Because you were never with him when it mattered. Only now, when he became conveniently ill, did you show up. Monroe was calm.
The hook worked. They are on it now.
And us?
We are the fishermen. Now we pull the net.
I went to the bathroom. Looked in the mirror. My face, tired. My eyes, not shining, but determined. I wasn't an actress. But for the first time in my life, I played a role that mattered. And you know what? The show is just beginning. By evening, the room became quiet. Not the awkward kind, the kind a familiar friend sits down and holds your hand. The sun slid across the walls in soft gold, like an artist accidentally smudging his brush. Etienne lay covered in the blanket. We returned to him. The theater had played out, now came life. Or, more precisely, end credits.
There's a bottle of port in the basement. 97. Nobody earned it. Except me. Will you bring it?
I brought it. Opened it with the kind of trepidation you usually reserve for unknown doors. Poured into glasses. I sat beside him. He raised his hand, almost steady. In his eyes there was something new. Or maybe, something long forgotten. Grandeur. No theater.
To dignity.
He said. To justice, I replied. We drank as though we were negotiating peace with life. The wine was warm, slightly bitter, just like his character. I thought, if he'd had the choice of how this ends, he'd pick this. A glass in hand, a woman beside him, and none of those who once called him family. And then he simply fell asleep. No drama. No final gasp. One breath. Second breath. And silence, so profound the kettle in the kitchen didn't dare to hum. I sat with him. Held his hand. It grew cold over time, but I didn't let go. Maybe because this was the only time it felt easy to hold. His face relaxed. The wrinkles faded. Or maybe, I finally saw him not as an old man, but as a human who lived much and still chose himself. Outside, dawn broke. The milky morning spread across the curtains, and I thought, even the sky wasn't hurrying. This time, it decided to wait. Chapter 9, Ghosts on Voicemail and Dandelions in the Teapot. When people can't control you, they start controlling a version of you in their mind. In that version, of course, you're ungrateful, manipulative, and toxic. Convenient. Safe. They don't have to deal with the real you. The one who doesn't forgive and doesn't stay silent. The one who now drinks tea, not out of hurt, but with dandelions. Yes, I started adding dandelions to my tea. Dried ones. Monsieur Basson gave me a bag, saying,
Against everything, including people.
He probably meant inflammation, but honestly, I hoped it worked against relatives, too. After we launched our medical theater act on the home stage, complete with set, drama, and props, the silence that followed the next day felt suspicious. So suspicious, I checked 3 times that I hadn't accidentally unplugged the internet cable while mopping the floor. On day 2, real letters began arriving. Not emails. Stamped envelopes, handwriting that looked like it came from someone wearing gloves. Or trembling. One, a prayer. Another, a family photo with a torn corner, where I was, obviously. A third, a card reading, "Forgive us. We didn't know." They didn't know. Of course they didn't. And if they did, they'd pretend it was just advertising. Edin always said you must treat family like strangers in an elevator. Polite, minimal, and never tell them where you're going. I began to understand why. Monroe responded to all this with clinical calm.
This is part of the plan.
She said.
Anger, guilt, attempts at cleansing. Classic. Next phase, the meeting.
I don't want to see them.
You don't want to, but you must.
Which is why we scheduled the meeting for Saturday morning. Location, a cafe on the corner. Neutral ground. Like the UN, but with croissants. I got there early. Sat by the window, ordered an espresso. Took a sip, and realized it was stronger than my entire self-esteem from the past decade. Melissa was first to arrive. In a blouse shouting, "I suffer, but I have taste." Then Adrian. He looked like he'd spent a week sleeping on a floor and eating anxiety by the spoonful. Last came Helen. No scarves this time. That was already alarming. They sat opposite me. Like a lineup at a hearing.
We want to talk.
Helen began. You started by lodging a complaint, I replied.
It was a defense.
From what? The consequences of your indifference? Silence. Not the cozy kind. The kind where words try to come out but get stuck in the throat. I looked at them and didn't feel anger. More fatigue. Like I'd carried their silence in a sack all year, and just now set it down.
Why did you do all this?
Adrian asked.
The theater? The photos? The recordings? It was cruel.
It was cruel to let him die alone. That's the answer. He dropped his eyes. Melissa wiped the corner of her eye, with no tears. Helen pulled out a handkerchief. Also pointless. But dramatic.
He wouldn't have wanted fights.
She said. He wouldn't have wanted loneliness either, I answered. Choose. I pulled out the documents. Fund papers. Reports. Deeds. Everything that proved, what we did wasn't revenge. It was justice restored. The house is now mine. The foundation is functioning. His name is alive. And I won't let this become your family talk show. They nodded. Someone respectfully. Someone irritated. Someone is just clueless. I paid the bill. Stood up. Wished them a good day. And walked out, without looking back. At home, I kicked off my shoes. Cut myself a piece of pie. Sat in the chair. And played Etienne's last voice message. I kept it like a talisman. His voice was weak, but precise.
If you're hearing this, it means you didn't flinch. I knew you. You're not a guest. You're my choice. Thank you.
I pressed repeat, and again. Until the dandelion tea grew cold. Chapter 10. Coffee quiet morning, golden light and amp, a letter from the past. The next day, I woke up without an alarm. Usually, my mornings start with the garbage truck or the neighbor's cat training for a maracas solo. But today, silence. That rare kind of quiet you want to spread on toast. Thick, warm, almost edible. I walked to the kitchen barefoot. The tiles were brisk but not hostile. The kettle was already boiling. Strange, since I hadn't turned it on. Maybe small miracles had started happening in this house. I brewed rosemary tea. Etienne used to say rosemary helps memory. I used to joke that it'd probably work better smoked. But now, I went with tea. Just in case. My notebook was on the windowsill. Inside, the entire chaos of my head. Lists, thoughts, names of people I wouldn't trust with a saucepan for 2 minutes. Helen stood out particularly bright. Adrian, as always, sometimes present, mostly unstable. Like train Wi-Fi. I took a sip. Outside, something chirped. Could have been birds. It could have been the neighbor's car alarm that no one fixes. Either way, Paris was waking up, and I was already ahead. Then, the doorbell rang. Not the intercom. Not the phone. The door. I nearly dropped my mug. Threw on a robe, the one that really should say, I'm home, but I'd rather not be, and opened the door. That bell. It felt like I'd heard it 100 times in my head. In dreams. Or in those anxious morning silences between sips of reality. There stood a postman. Young. Fresh. With a face that screamed, "I work in insurance ads where everything is okay."
Madam Michaud?
He asked politely. Almost. I replied. I'm almost Michaud. Almost calm. Almost confident. My life is basically almost. He handed me an envelope. Brown. Sealed with red wax. Theatrical red. The handwriting, unmistakable. I felt a cold shiver beneath my skin. I sat down in the kitchen. The envelope in front of me. Inhale. Exhale. I opened it. Inside, a letter. Undated. In ink. Neat and firm, like he still held the pen with the same steadiness as his principles.
Sophie, if you're reading this, it means you've reached the end. Or rather, the beginning. I leave you not just the house and the papers. I leave you the people. Not willingly. Not in their best form. You'll see their fear, their weakness, their guilt. Don't be afraid. You're already stronger. But if you can, don't become like them. Revenge is sweet, but it dries the mouth. Forgive them if you can. Or at least, don't waste your health on them. The foundation is yours. The house is yours. But you belong to no one. Not even me. You are free. I know you'll manage. Not because you're strong, but because you're real. And that's rare. Protect it. Your papa. Etienne.
I finished reading. No tears. Just sat there. Even the tea had cooled, as if it respected the pause. Outside, the birds were still yelling. This time, joyfully. Almost on cue. I folded the letter. Placed it in the box with his glasses. Then walked to the garden. Sat down. The sun hit my face like a detective's flashlight in a noir film. Papa Etienne, I said aloud. You were right. Revenge dries you out. But rosemary tea saves you. Somewhere, a dog barked. The neighbor waved from his balcony. And I kept living. Which, honestly, was new. Even to me. Chapter 11. Open house and amp. Chocolate with side effects. In every French town, sooner or later, there's what locals call an événement culturel, and normal people call an excuse to wash the tablecloth and invite neighbors you can't stand. It could be a cheese festival, a book day, a Georges Brassens tribute night, or a ceramics show where 3 identical vases cost as much as a gym membership. In my case, the event was the open house day for the Foundation Etienne Michaud. Monroe suggested it. At first, I made a face, as if she'd invited me to salsa with the mayor. Then I admitted she was right. People needed to know why this house is now open not only to drafts.
We'll show the foundation isn't about money.
She said.
It's about people. And about how sometimes one warm word is enough so someone doesn't slip into the abyss.
Or at least doesn't fall into it with applause, I added. We chose a date. Printed invitations. Sent them across the neighborhood. Monroe switched to her official mode, makes printers work faster. I switched to my home mode, made jam, cleaned windows, gathered flowers with a look of everything's under control. While inside I screamed, what if no one comes? On the day I woke at 6:47. No reason. Or rather, anxiety. It got up earlier than me, as usual. I brewed mint tea, checked everything. Chairs, check, kettles, hot, cookies, like picture perfect, tablecloths, spotless. Even Etienne, in his photo frame, looked satisfied. Like he was saying, Sophie, you threw a party I'd attend, even without a tie. At 10:02, Julie arrived in a blue dress with a pie.
No cream, but with a story and dried fruit.
She said. Perfect. Our style, I replied. Then Mr. Basson arrived with lemon liqueur. Which, according to him, cured everything, including character. We decided not to test that theory, but the bottle sat on the table for ambience. By 10:30 a.m., people began showing up. Some neighbors, some just curious. An old lady who once babysat Adrian. A girl from the bakery where we left our change. Even the young postman who is in love with Julie. Mr. Basson and I figured it out silently. I spoke about the foundation. About Etienne. About how he didn't want pity, but he wanted his voice not to vanish. Monroe stood beside me, like a justice guard in designer heels. People listened, nodded. Some cried. Some laughed. And then the part one didn't plan began.
Sophie.
A voice. I turned. Saw a woman. Tall, thin, in black. About 50-something. Serious eyes, as though she'd spent her life staring at truth. In her hands, a simple grey box, tied with a ribbon.
I'm Solange, Etienne's sister.
I almost dropped my cup. He had a sister?
He did.
She answered calmly.
I live in Lyon. We haven't spoken in ages. So long. Sometimes, because of me. Sometimes, because of him. But letters. I know he wrote them. Even if he didn't always send them.
She stepped closer. In her eyes weren't tears. Just something tired and maybe guilty. She spoke quietly but so that everyone fell silent.
I found out he was gone, not from you. And not right away. But when I read it, I knew I had to come. I had neither reason nor plan. Just a feeling I'd be told something. Or that I needed to say something. Late, but honest.
She handed me the box. Inside, neatly arranged items. Books with his notes, tattered notebooks with dog-eared pages, an audio cassette, yes, real 90s style, and a postcard. On it, his handwriting, firm, like himself.
For the one who stayed. Don't lose north.
That's when I realized I couldn't hold it in. I cried. Not trying to stop. Right there, among guests, in front of floral tablecloths and chamomile teacups. No one judged. No one stared. Because in those moments, people sense, it's not just emotion. It's true. And truth deserves open doors, too. Solange quietly sat down beside me. We didn't talk. Just Saturday. As though we shared something very important and fragile. Not the past, even, but the thing that wasn't lived in time. By evening, the guests started leaving. Some left flowers. Some notes. Some, milk chocolate. I had a piece. It was salted. Inside, a nut. Outside, warm evening and quiet. Well then, Etienne, I set out the window. The day succeeded. Even if you didn't love people, they love you. He, of course, didn't answer. But I saw his photo frame glow slightly brighter. Chapter 12. The House of the Forgotten and the Resurrected Garden. After open house day came a strange pause. No raging phone calls, no legal seals, no debates. Only me, rosemary tea, and the garden where the leaves finally decided they could stop talking about the weather. It was the kind of silence that doesn't terrify but first confuses and then becomes familiar. Like the neighbor's morning cough on the second floor. I thought a lot. More than I planned. About the foundation, about Etienne, about those we now call our wards. Though I'd rather say our mirrors. Because every person who came to the foundation reminded me of a part of myself. The one who once felt unneeded, extra, accidental. Monroe and I dove into expansion. Legal assistance, a media campaign, city negotiations. Monroe, for the record, turned out to be a person with 7 organizers and an iron grip. She can say no in such a way that the other person leaves grateful. I observed and learned. My usual no used to turn into, well, maybe just a little. We brought Julie into the mix. She became the volunteer coordinator. Strict, but kind. She believed the best way to gauge someone's suitability for the job is to watch how they make tea. If they are rushing, everything else will be shallow. A simple method, but, turns out, 80% effective. Meanwhile, I returned to Etienne's notebooks. They held not only memories, but lists. Something like his personal code.
Don't be afraid to look ridiculous. Old people are the ones who got tired first. Better to be misunderstood than useless.
I hung the list in the foundation's office. Some visitors took photos. One elderly man even asked for my autograph, thinking I wrote it all. I didn't correct him. His smile was so genuine, I thought it was worth a little fib. And everything went smoothly. Until one morning, I found a postcard in the mailbox. No stamp. No signature. On the front, a drawn tree. On the back, just 2 words. We will return soon. I froze. First thought, Melissa. Or Adrian. Or Helen. They always loved the dramatic flair, even in threats. I showed the postcard to Monroe. She smirked.
They're not coming back.
She said.
They're just reminding you they know how to use paper.
What if they do come back?
Then we'll be ready. We don't just have a foundation now. We have a reputation.
Yet now, as part of my nightly ritual, I check the locks. Just in case. Even if the enemies are refined, security is never too much. That evening I went into the garden. It was getting dark. The air smelled like bay leaf and unresolved grievances. I sat on the bench and thought, maybe the point of grown-up life is not to be fearless, but to be steady. So that even when the wind blows, you hold your ground. I turned on the flashlight. The beam fell on a flower bed. There, among the leaves, I saw it, the first late bloom iris. Purple. Stubborn. Like memory. I looked at the sky. No words. No demands. No fanfare. Just presence. And I think the house understood. Because at that moment a light turned on, by itself. I started walking to switch it off, but paused in the doorway. And thought, maybe I shouldn't. Let it burn. In case someone decides to come back. And if it isn't me, then I'm already home. Chapter 13. Legal Arena, Memory Blossoms and Amp, The Patient's Dessert. The day began with a cup of strong coffee and a view of the city that never sleeps, even when it's playing hide-and-seek with itself. The Foundation's office had turned into an arsenal. Tables laden with folders filled with cases about people. Inside me, a mild panic boiled, one I decided not to invite to lunch. Monroe burst in at 9:17 a.m., looking like she'd just heard, "We've lost." But her face shifted instantly to "We caught up," and that was a victory in a charcoal grey suit and black briefcase.
Today is the court hearing for our first case,
she said.
The family has filed a countersuit.
Let me guess, this time it's about the Limoges vase? I quipped. Truth be told, I wanted to add, I already bruised my finger.
No, but they are demanding that they will be nullified and shares returned.
So, they decided to flex muscles. We respond with strategy.
Exactly, but they forget one thing.
What's that?
That we no longer play by family rules. We play by humanities.
I nodded, dragged a folder toward me. It looked like a suitcase labeled History of One Life. Inside, lawyers' fees, translated reports, testimonies. All pieces of a puzzle reassembled from the wreckage of relationships and promises. At noon, we went to the courtroom. I wore a coat in the noble hue of a future without their gilding, and boots that had been trailing me like a sunset shadow. Monroe, confident as a beacon in a storm. Me, quiet echo of I'm not afraid. In the car, she turned on the radio, and someone was talking about the stock market and retirees investing in pension funds. We both laughed. If they knew, I said, that my fund isn't corporate shares but a life that's worth something. The courtroom was cold like a Victorian drama. I sat next to Monroe, tea in a thermos. Yes, I resorted to that, and notes in hand. Opposite, her family's lawyer, with a folder as thick as a 5-year tax return. He opened with claims. In the Michaud family, the practice is. But Monroe cut him off with a look, and he shut up. I felt the room warm from justice. When my turn came to speak, I stood. Not as an accuser. As keeper of silence. I spoke about Etienne, how he waited, how he asked, how he kept quiet. About those who walked past. About the foundation born not from PR, but from pain. Humor didn't fit in that moment. But I couldn't help a faint inner smile, because they thought they could reach us with a vase. After my words, the family's lawyer slammed the table. I thought, oh, they can slam glass too. But little use. The glass's transparency was gone anyway. The verdict wasn't instant. We came out into the street, November grey, but not cold. I inhaled the city air, exhaust, coffee, umbrellas, footsteps. Life didn't wait. And I realized, victory isn't one signature. Victory is when you can go home and see the house has become a home. I walked out of the court building. The city wasn't a triumph site, it was a laboratory. On the bench across from the metro, an 80-year-old woman Saturday. Her hands trembled as she clutched an old newspaper. She's waiting for someone, I thought. I moved closer, noticed on her lap, one dark blue knitted mitten. Worn, with a frayed yarn at the wrist. Just the one. Like the ones grandmothers hid in pockets so the pair wouldn't get separated. She held it like something alive, like a reminder of someone who no longer calls. I passed by. A young guy in headphones sat on the bookstore steps flipping a funeral ritual catalog. He said out loud, "Yeah, it's serious here." And I realized, someone else's story plays out right beneath my window. I returned to Etienne's garden. Sat on the bench. Illuminated by a street lamp, it looked like just a bench. But I felt it remembered all the conversations I had while sitting there, thinking I was losing. Now it was waiting for me to stay. Autumn was already casting shadows longer than moonlight. But there was still light. I took the thermos, poured tea, and added dandelions, yes, again. Took a sip. And realized, the Foundation's work isn't just about documents. It's about quiet voices that never get heard in family talk shows. And I said, Etienne, we didn't lose. We just started differently. On the way home, I bought a cake. Not small. Not modest. Big. With chocolate and salt. Because every day you keep going, you deserve cake. And a little cake for the soul never hurts. In the Foundation's office, I hung a sign, "No place for oblivion." Under it, a photo of Etienne with children, alive and silent, and blooming lilacs. Then I turned off the light. And imagined someone entering and seeing not an empty house, but a light. Because light isn't a lamp. Light is memory, action, and promise. And I stayed. To be where I was awaited. And now I await those who didn't want to be there. So they can see, the doors are open. Even if they never knew how to walk in. Chapter 14. Bitter cookies and amp. The drafts of unforgiveness. Sometimes I feel the house is not walls and a roof. It's the drafts. They remember everything. They rush through rooms where people argued, went silent, kissed, dropped keys, crumbs piled up, and they record it all in their windy memory. Then they strike at the most unexpected moment. For example, when you open a window just to air the place, and they burst in with a load of memories you never signed up for. One morning, I did just that, opened the kitchen window. A gust nearly blew me and my tea away. The wind had the character of my grandmother on Sunday. I grabbed the windowsill, swore, and thought, the draft reminds me of something. Something important. And indeed, at that moment, I got a text from Melissa. Well, not exactly SMS. A message in the "I'm not asking anything, just thought you should know" series. She wrote,
Dad, it turns out he kept lots of documents about Grandma. I think they could matter for the Foundation. I'm not interfering. Just, in case you want to look. They're with me.
It wasn't just an invitation. It was a test. A pie with a surprise. And the surprise? Not sweet. Monroe responded, of course, with impeccable calm.
You can refuse.
Yes, but then I'll think I didn't just refuse a meeting, but something bigger.
Such as?
The chance that someone in their midst can behave like a human. I went. Not immediately. I picked the day. The outfit, twice. In the end, I wore jeans and a sweater Etten called a down jacket for inner resilience. It was blue, warm, and made me look like a woman who knows her limits. We met at the cafe. The very one where I once nearly spilled coffee out of anger. Melissa was already seated. Serious. Attentive. Around us, a world where no one knew we were a former family.
Hi.
She said.
You look good.
I take vitamins. And I don't talk with you, I replied. She smiled.
Fair.
There was a box on the table. Inside, letters. Photographs. Documents. I flipped through them. Melissa stayed silent. Only once she said,
I didn't know Dad kept a journal. Sometimes I thought he felt nothing. Yet apparently, he wrote it all. Just didn't say.
Yes, I replied. He didn't speak. But he was. And you were the voices on his voicemail. We sat a little longer. She brought tea. I took it. Simply because tea isn't a truce. It's hydration.
I regret this turned out like this.
And I regret you regret only now. We parted ways at the crosswalk. On the way home, I stopped at the bakery. Bought cookies. With nuts. Bittersweet. Called them cookies of unforgiveness. At home, I sat in the garden. The box rested on my knees. The draft blew again. It whispered across the terrace, lifted the corner of an old blanket. I straightened it and thought, maybe drafts are spirits. Of those who can't leave until they are heard. I opened a letter from Etienne's journal.
Sometimes I think silence is my way not to lose myself. If I spoke all I feel, I wouldn't exist anymore. But now I realize, silence doesn't save. It hides. And the person who is hidden, even from themselves, disappears.
I closed the letter, closed my eyes, took a sip of tea. The cookie crunched, as if to confirm, yes, forgiving isn't required. But seeing that is. And the draft passed once more. This time, softer. This time, it stroked me on the head with an invisible hand. Chapter 15. Inventory of Hearts and Amp. Candy from the past. I always believed that any house has a heart. You can't see it on a floor plan or find it in the land registry. But it's there. Sometimes it's the room where you drink tea. Sometimes, the old coat rack is where everyone tosses their jackets. And sometimes, the storage room. In our case, it was Etienne's old room, which we decided, no, not to restore, but to resurrect. Monroe insisted.
Let's turn it into an archive.
For papers?
For life.
She brought in a team of university students, young, glasses, backpacks full of laptops and enthusiasm. We started sorting through the drawers. At first carefully, then like excavators in a dig. There was everything. Letters, receipts, shopping lists, margin notes. Etienne, it turned out, was a fan of lists. Books he wanted to read. Films he never saw. People he wanted to forgive. His last list was empty. I understood him. I have one too.
Will this go into the exhibit?
Asked one of the students. Not all of it, I answered. Some, to a museum. Some, to the heart. We worked all day. At the end, I opened an old tin candy box. Inside, photographs. Etienne, very young, smiling with a woman I didn't know. On the back, a note, in case I forget. I didn't know who she was. And I decided not to find out. Some stories are better left open, like a spring window. Monroe brought tea. Julie, a cake. With nuts and condensed milk. The kitchen was warm again. People walked barefoot. Someone whispered. Someone laughed. And I sat and thought, is this real life, when you don't have to be a hero to be needed? Towards evening, a letter came. From the city council. The words partnership and project sounded like victory. I read it aloud. Everyone applauded. Even the student who had sat silent for an hour, eating only buckwheat from a container, said,
You seriously inspire me.
And in the evening I went into the garden. With a flashlight, a blanket. There was a rustle. I thought, the cat. But it was Adrian. Sitting on the bench. Quiet as rain. I jumped.
Don't be afraid. I'm not here to accuse. Just wanted to see.
What?
What you built, from what we broke.
We sat in silence. Then he pulled out a candy. That same one, from the candy box.
I stole it from Dad when I was 10. Still keep it. Stupid, huh?
No. It's memory. Only edible. He left. No scandal. No accusations. No finale. And that was enough. And I stayed. With the flashlight, the garden, the house. With the box in which there was a heart. Not the heart of the house, of Etienne's. And mine too. Because now they beat in rhythm. Chapter 16. The show is over, but the stage remains. Sometimes I feel our life is a show where the curtain never fully drops. It just goes dark, and you remain in the empty auditorium, listening to someone backstage adjusting chairs. The theater is over, yet the stage is still alive. And you on it. Even if the audience is gone. That's how my grand performance with Etienne, the foundation, the family, and this, if I may say so, epic saga, ended. I don't say battle because a battle suggests one side lost. In our case, we didn't win. We didn't lose. We simply stayed. Some of us with scars. Some of us with postcards we never sent. The day I finally felt the story reach its finale started with the kettle. Not a letter. Not a call. Not a visit from former relatives. But the kettle refused to switch on. It just remained silent. I stood there, shook the cord. It was dead. The kettle, faithful companion of all those months, decided to retire. Without words. Without complaint. Even you? I asked. Even you? I put on my coat, walked outside, and bought a new kettle. Not the same. Modern. With lighting and a voice assistant, which I disabled within the hour. Back home, I placed the new kettle where the old one was, and thought, here we are. Everything renewed. Then I noticed a letter on the floor by the door. Paper. A stiff envelope, no return address. I opened it. Inside, brief.
You didn't just save a name. You created your own. Keep going. E.
I didn't know who E was. Maybe a friend of his. Maybe the lawyer. Maybe one of those observing. But I felt something inside click. The final scene. The last lock clicking in an empty theater. The day was warm. I decided to spend it with just me. No guests. No business. No obligations. Just me. The garden, a blanket, a new book, not about herbs this time, a novel, tea with lemon and honey. And the lilac, no longer blooming, but still real. Resolute. Like me. Julie sent a message.
You have the day off now. By statute.
I replied, now I have life. Without statutes. Later that evening I turned on the radio. Music played. Not trendy. Not old. Just music. In the background, steps outside the window. Someone walking. Someone living. Everything as it should be. I opened the notebook in which I had written everything. And I wrote the last line. The foundation works. People come. And me? I remain. Not because I have nowhere to go. Because here, my place. Not Etienne's. Not theirs. Mine. Then, almost automatically, I took a walk. The evening was lit but not bright. One of those when you see shadows, but you're unafraid. I walked the street where I once feared appearing. Now, I greeted neighbors. They smiled. Waved. Someone even said,
"Thank you, Sophie, for what you've done."
I replied, not me. Us. Just someone started earlier. I entered the shop where they still sold those same candy tins. Bought one. For memory. The shopkeeper asked.
Are you the one from the foundation?
No, I answered. I'm just from this town. Back home, I placed the candy tin in a vase. On display. Let it sit. As a symbol that the past need not be swallowed, but preserved, if it was sweet, even just a little. I switched off the light. By the window, the moon. Big. Round. Bold, as ever. A draft blew through the corridor. But it wasn't cold. Just routine. Checking if everything was in place. And it was. Finally, everything was. At first, I thought it was over. The theater played out. The will had been announced. Family masks were tossed aside. But no. It had only just begun. Very soon, letters began arriving. One. Then another. Then 10. Then stacks. People wrote from all corners of France.
My father died alone. We were nearby, but not there.
Or,
My mother spent 2 years in a nursing home. None of us visited. I can't forgive myself.
some tucked money inside, 20 euros, 100. Some, just a note, so no one else dies in silence. Couriers started delivering envelopes from firms, seals, logos, official letters. We, too, are for all things good. I folded all of it into a box. A simple cardboard one, once a multi-cooker packaging. Now, our paper altar. The box of memory. It sits in my office, beside the rose I've been drying since spring. And each evening I read at least one letter. Sometimes aloud. Sometimes by whisper. Sometimes, just hold it in my hands. Because it's all about them. About those forgotten. Those never visited. Those loved, in words. Then ceased. And I understood. This house is no longer just a house. It's now, the house of the forgotten. The house of those who should have been needed but were only needed asterisk by a star. And maybe that's justice. Or at least, it's beginning. If you stay till the end, You and I are already somewhat acquainted. It means something in my story resonated in yours. If that's so, please share yours. Not for likes. Not for numbers. But so that someone, like you, never feels alone. We live differently, but often feel the same. Write in comments what lives in your heart. I'm here. And I'm listening.